holiday season is for sure the one time of year when you're going to want to try baking with your Thermador convection ovens. The challenge a lot of people have when it comes to baking in a convection oven has nothing to do with the oven. It's the fact that the recipes don't even reference the fact that you have a convection oven. Generally, recipes state, preheat your oven to 350 and put the food in. Sometimes they might give an indication if the food should go towards the lower part of the oven or the mid part of the oven. So, baking in convection can be very confusing. However, I'm here to give you a few tips to help you navigate through the confusion and have perfect success with all of your holiday baking. Whether it's cookies, cakes, muffins, or pies. You will find that there's a time you'll want to use the true convection or the convection bake mode, and there are times you'll want to use regular bake. Now remember, when you bake in convection, you have heated air circulating around the oven. Convection heating was actually developed for the baking industry so that bakers could cook on multiple racks at one time. And the very first thing they discovered was that strong driving heat meant that recipe temperatures had to be reduced by 25 degrees when baking in convection. Temperature reduction is perhaps the most important thing to remember, but I'm going to give you some other tips now to help you achieve success when baking in your Thermador ovens. The very first thing we do before we begin baking is to preheat the oven. But in fact, before you preheat the oven, the very first thing you should do is organize your rack positions. When you bake in the convection mode in the Thermador ovens, on 3 racks, it's recommended that you choose rack position 1, 3, and 5. If you bake on 2 racks, then it's recommended that you place the racks on rack position 2 and 5. This information, which is crucial to the success of your baking, can be found in the Thermador user guide. But I just want you to really embed it. It will make all the difference with your baking. So we have a variety of trays here that we use for different types of baking. Rimmed baking sheets we find are ideal for bar cookies or for jelly roll cakes. But we really don't use them so much for cookies because the sides of the pan influence how the cookies will cook. Instead, we find perfectly flat baking sheets work beautifully in convection. Notice this pan has a slight lip on one side. Alternately, this flat cookie sheet is also a great choice. It has a little lip on either side. The one thing that's important about both of these cookie sheets is that they're perfectly flat, they are not insulated. If your cookie sheets are insulated, then they won't work as well in convection. They're designed to be used in regular bake. If you're baking on several racks at one time, be sure to use the same cookie tray to get even results. Now remember, when we're baking in convection, we reduce the recipe temperatures by 25 degrees. There's a very clear way to understand if your recipe temperature is too high. You'll begin to see a dark ring around the edge of your cookies and the center won't be set. It's hard to imagine, but different trays conduct heat differently. So when you're getting used to the trays and your oven, pay careful attention, and if you need to drop the temperature by just a tad, then do so you'll get the perfect results you're looking for. So who doesn't love a delicious homemade pie? And your Thermador oven is fantastic for baking pies. I'll tell you why. These ovens have a concealed bottom heating element. It's underneath a steel plate. So as that plate gets hot, it brings gentle radiant heat into the oven, and that cooks the base of the pies through. Older-fashioned ovens often had an exposed heating element, and whilst they heated the oven up very quickly, they tended to boil the ingredients in the pie and often caused, especially fruit, to boil out of a pie. So With this oven, you don't need a liner on the bottom of the oven. You don't need to put a sheet pan underneath the pies to catch any drips, because everything will stay in the pie shell and the base will be perfectly cooked through. When you bake pies in convection, you're going to have this wonderful circulating heat that will help cook the pies through from the edge to the center. But if the pastry is well cooked and the center is just still a little bit uncooked, you can change the mode to regular bake for the last 5 to 7 minutes to help with that drying action so you get the perfect pie. Because we talk about convection so much, people are always asking me, well, when do I use regular bake? Well, in fact, there's quite a few times when it comes to baking that you're going to really want to use regular bake. Why? Because with a lot of cakes, you start off with a dense, wet batter. And what do you want it to do? Dry out. What does regular bake or radiant heat do so well? Dries food out. Now, you don't want your chicken or your turkeys to dry out, but when it comes to your baked goods, you want them to be light and airy with a delicious light crumb. So that's the time I use regular bake. When you are using regular bake, use rack position 3, use the regular recipe temperature, and everything should be cooked to perfection. Now, other items that do really well in regular bake are meringues, soufflés, popovers, angel food cake, and biscuits. They all have their own rising power, and they like that dry, stable environment to rise to perfection. When you're baking, there are all kinds of things that can happen. You can forget to put the salt in, the sugar, the bicarbonate of soda. There's all kinds of things, but I can assure you one thing. It won't be your oven that causes the problems. That is, provided you use the right rack positions, use the right types of trays to cook on, and reduce your recipe temperatures by 25 degrees. Also pay attention, sometimes when you're baking in glass, you might need to drop the temperature just a little bit more. You know how you'll know? You'll start to see that dark ring form around the edge, so just go down 5 degrees. Your oven is designed to cook to perfection. Following those simple tips will help you achieve that.